The operating system you installed to get work done is logging what you do, when you do it, and how long you spend doing it. And Microsoft calls it a feature, not a bug reported by researchers, not a vulnerability discovered in a backdoor audit. A feature, announced, documented, and enabled by default on Windows 12. And if you haven't changed a single setting since you set up your machine, it's running right now. I want to be clear about something before we go any further. This isn't speculation. This isn't a conspiracy theory dressed up in tech language. What I'm going to walk you through today is documented behavior, confirmed by independent security researchers, flagged by privacy advocates, and acknowledged, quietly, by Microsoft itself. The question isn't whether this is happening. The question is whether you know about it and whether you've decided to accept it. You haven't been given much of a choice, but by the end of this, you will have one. Let's get specific, because vague warnings don't help you. You need to know exactly what's being captured and where it goes. Windows 12 ships with a system Microsoft has branded under its broader Copilot AI ecosystem. At its core is an activity indexing engine that runs persistently in the background of your session. What it does, technically, is maintain a rolling log of your active application usage, document interactions, browser session data passed through integrated Windows components, and in certain configurations, periodic visual snapshots of your screen state. Microsoft's own support documentation describes this as enabling personalized AI assistance across your workflow. Security researchers describe it differently. If you open Settings, navigate to Privacy and Security, then select Activity History, you'll find a toggle that most users have never touched because the setup process didn't highlight it. That toggle, in its default state, is on. Below it, depending on your account configuration, you may see an option to send that activity data to Microsoft's cloud. On accounts linked to a Microsoft ID, which the Windows 12 installation process strongly encourages, that second option is also enabled by default. What's being collected isn't abstract metadata. It's a structured record of your computing behavior, which applications you open, how long you spend in each one, what files you interact with, identified by name and type, browser activity routed through Edge, including visited domains, and in the specific builds that include the enhanced Copilot recall functionality, periodic screen captures taken at intervals, and stored in an encrypted local index that is, nonetheless, accessible to the AI layer running on your device. Think about what that means practically. Your tax documents, your medical searches, your private messages opened in a browser, your work files, all of it flowing into a behavioral index that exists, by design, to be read by an AI system you didn't explicitly commission to watch you. Zach Whitaker, security editor at TechCrunch, covered the initial rollout of Windows 12's AI features and noted that the activity collection framework was broader in scope than Microsoft's public communications suggested. The Electronic Frontier Foundation issued a formal analysis stating that the default configuration of Windows 12's activity history represents, in their words, a significant expansion of the data relationship between Microsoft and end users with opt-out rather than opt-in consent architecture. That phrase, opt-out rather than opt-in, is the key to understanding what's actually happening here. You were enrolled, you weren't asked. Independent testing conducted by the privacy research team at Proton, published in early 2025, documented the network traffic generated by a clean Windows 12 installation during a standard work session. The findings showed periodic telemetry transmissions to Microsoft endpoints even when Cloud Sync was toggled off in the visible settings panel, suggesting that certain baseline telemetry operates below the layer that consumer-facing privacy controls actually reach. Proton's researchers were careful to note this wasn't classified as malicious behavior under any legal framework. But they were equally clear that most users would not consider it expected behavior either. This is the part that should make you uncomfortable. This wasn't an accident, a bug, or an oversight. To understand why Microsoft built this the way they built it, you have to understand what Microsoft is in 2025. It is not primarily a software company. It hasn't been for years. It is a cloud infrastructure company, an enterprise services company, and increasingly, an AI platform company. The software, Windows, Office, Edge, is the distribution layer. The relationship with you, the user, is the asset. When Microsoft invested $13 billion into OpenAI, that wasn't a bet on a product. It was a bet on data-driven AI services becoming the central commercial model of enterprise computing. And training, refining, and personalizing those AI services requires behavioral data at scale, not anonymized, aggregated click counts. Granular, contextual, behavioral patterns, what people actually do on their computers in sequence over time. Windows 12's activity monitoring framework feeds directly into that model. The Copilot assistant that Microsoft has positioned as the headline feature of Windows 12 is not impressive because of raw model capability. It's positioned to be impressive because it knows your context. It knows what you were working on yesterday. It knows which applications you use together. It knows your patterns. And it knows those things because it's been watching. Microsoft's public messaging frames this as convenience. Your AI that knows your workflow. The advertising is warm, the UI is clean, the language is about productivity and personalization. But underneath that framing is a business decision. Your behavioral data has commercial value, and the most efficient way to collect it is to make the collection the default and the opt-out the exception. It's like being handed a loyalty card at a store and only finding out on page 14 of the terms that the card also tracks every conversation you have in the building. The convenience is real. The cost is just not displayed at the counter. Security researcher Tom Van Davila, who has consulted for F-Secure and published extensively on endpoint surveillance, put it plainly in a post-launch analysis. The architecture of Windows 12's AI features was not designed around privacy as a first principle. It was designed around capability as a first principle, with privacy controls added as a compliance layer. That distinction matters. A compliance layer is designed to satisfy regulators. A privacy-first architecture is designed to protect you. Those are not the same thing. And here's what really bothers me about the way this has been presented. Microsoft hasn't lied. Every single thing I've described is technically disclosed somewhere in their documentation, their terms of service, their privacy dashboard. They haven't hidden it in the sense of making it technically inaccessible. They've hidden it in the sense that matters practically, buried in default settings, obscured by a reassuring language, and positioned behind a setup flow designed to minimize friction, which in this context means minimizing informed decision-making. When I went through a clean Windows 12 install myself, the activity history prompt appears during the OOBE, the out-of-box experience setup flow, as a single screen with a description focused entirely on what Copilot can do for you. The data collection implications are not the headline, they're the fine print below the "Yes, let's go" button. And that button is pre-selected. If you felt like something was off with the way Windows keeps getting more persistent, more connected, more difficult to use without a Microsoft account, you weren't being paranoid. You were noticing something real. All right, let's talk about what you can actually do, because awareness without action is just anxiety. The good news is that unlike some of the deeper telemetry issues in previous Windows versions, the activity history and Copilot data collection in Windows 12 is substantially controllable through settings that actually work. At the consumer level, you don't need third-party tools for the core fixes, though I'll mention some that go further for users who want them. Let's go layer by layer. The first thing you're going to do is disable activity history collection at the system level. Press Windows and I together to open Settings, go to Privacy and Security, scroll down until you see Activity History. You'll see a checkbox that says Store my activity history on this device. Uncheck it. Directly below that, if you're signed in with a Microsoft account, you'll see Send my activity. History to Microsoft. Make sure that's also unchecked. Once you've done that, click Clear History on the same page. That deletes the local index of what's already been recorded. This takes about 90 seconds. Do it now, not after you finish watching. The second layer is Copilot's access to your local context. This is separate from activity history, and a lot of people miss it. Still in Settings, go to Privacy and Security, then select Search Permissions. You'll see a section called Cloud Content Search. There are two toggles, one for Microsoft account, one for work or school account. Turn both off. This prevents the search and Copilot components from indexing and transmitting context from your local files and browsing behavior. Also, on this page, turn off Search History. That's the record of what you've searched within Windows itself. Third, and this is the one most directly tied to the visual snapshot functionality that security researchers flagged most loudly, you need to check whether the recall feature is enabled on your build. Not all Windows 12 configurations ship with recall active, but on devices with the required NPU hardware, it may be on. Go to Settings, Privacy and Security, then look for Recall and Snapshots. If that option exists on your machine, open it. You'll see a toggle for Save Snapshots. Turn it off. Below that, click Delete Snapshots to clear anything already stored. If you want to go further, you can set storage allocation to 0, which prevents the feature from using disk space even if something re-enables it after an update. Fourth layer, Diagnostic Data. This one doesn't disable AI features, but it significantly reduces the behavioral telemetry Microsoft receives about how you use your system. Go to Settings, Privacy and Security, then Diagnostics and Feedback. Set diagnostic data to required rather than optional. Required is the minimum Microsoft says they need for Windows to function, which, make of that what you will, but it's substantially less than optional sends. Also on this page, turn off Improve Inking and Typing and Tailored Experiences. That last one is Microsoft's language for using your diagnostic data to serve you personalized recommendations and advertising within Windows. Fifth, and this applies specifically to Edge users. If you use Microsoft Edge as your browser, the browser has its own data sharing relationship with the AI stack that is independent of your Windows privacy settings. Open Edge, go to Settings, then Privacy, Search, and Services. Under optional diagnostic data, switch to basic. Under personalization and advertising, turn that off. And under search and service improvement, opt out. If you use a different browser, Firefox, Brave, a Chromium variant, these Edge settings don't apply to you, but it's worth doing a similar audit in whatever browser you do use. Now, for users who want to go further than the built-in settings allow, there are legitimate tools worth knowing about. O&O Shutup 10++ is a free application from a German software company that provides a comprehensive interface for Windows privacy settings, including some that aren't exposed in the standard settings app. It's not a hack, it's not a registry exploit. It's a GUI for settings that exist but aren't surfaced. It's been around since Windows 10. It's regularly updated for new Windows versions. And security. Researchers cite it regularly. Use it carefully, read what each setting does before toggling it, and create a restore point first. For users who need to go deeper, particularly anyone handling sensitive client data, medical, records, legal documents, or financial information, I'd also strongly recommend looking at running particularly sensitive workflows in a sandboxed environment or a separate user account that isn't linked to a Microsoft ID. A local account, set up without a Microsoft email, operates with significantly reduced cloud connectivity by default. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a meaningful reduction in the data surface. One important thing I want to be clear about before we move on. None of what I've described tonight is an argument against Windows Defender, against Smart Screen against Windows Hello, or against the security features that actually protect you from external threats. Keep those enabled. The monitoring we're discussing is about Microsoft's data collection from your normal activity. It has nothing to do with whether ransomware can encrypt your drive or whether a phishing link can steal your credentials. Privacy settings and security features are different things serving different purposes. Disabling the ones I described makes you less visible to Microsoft. It does not make you more vulnerable to attackers. Do not conflate those two things. If you're in an enterprise environment or using a work-managed device, your IT department controls many of these settings at the policy level, and your personal changes may be overridden by group policy. In that case, the conversation you need to have is with your IT or compliance team, not your personal settings app. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. Not fear, not paranoia, but clarity. There's a negotiation happening between you and every piece of software you run on your computer. Most of the time, that negotiation is invisible. The terms are buried, the defaults are chosen for the company's benefit, and the assumption is that you won't look closely enough to notice or care. Windows 12's activity monitoring is one version of that negotiation. Significant in scale, consequential in what it captures, but ultimately something you can push back on if you know where to push. The direction things are moving is not subtle. AI features require behavioral data. Behavioral data requires persistent collection. Persistent collection requires that you be enrolled by default, because opt-in rates are never high enough to build the data sets these systems need to be commercially valuable. That's not a conspiracy. It's just the math of the business model. And understanding the math helps you make a decision that's actually informed, rather than one you stumbled into by clicking next during setup. You're not paranoid for caring about this. The researchers who flagged it aren't alarmists. The privacy advocates who published the analyses aren't fringe voices. They're people who read the documentation, tested the behavior, and said out loud what the default settings were designed to make invisible. There are a lot of people making the same choices you're making right now. Turning off the defaults, reclaiming the settings, deciding that convenience on Microsoft's terms isn't automatically the right trade for them. You're the administrator of your own computer. Not a guest, not a data point. The administrator. Act like it. The settings I walked you through take about 15 minutes total. None of them cost anything. None of them break core functionality. What they do is shift the balance back toward you, toward your activity staying on your machine, your patterns not feeding a commercial AI pipeline you didn't sign up for, your computer doing what you asked it to do instead of what Microsoft's product roadmap requires. Do it today. Not because something catastrophic happens tomorrow if you don't, but because the longer those defaults run, the more data exists that you can't take back. The clear history button erases the local index. It doesn't reach the cloud data that's already been transmitted. The best time to make these changes is before that data exists. The second best time is right now. If this gave you something useful, a clearer picture of what's running on your machine and the specific steps to change it, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I cover these issues the moment they're documented and verified, not weeks later when it's already spread everywhere. Drop a comment and tell me, did you have any of these settings enabled before today? I read every single one. And if you know someone who just upgraded to Windows 12 and hasn't looked at any of this yet, send it to them. 15 minutes of their time and they'll have made a genuinely informed decision, probably for the first time since they unboxed the machine.